Happy Flossmas, stitchy friends. My name is Laura, and I'd like to welcome you to Stitching by the Shore, my channel all about cross stitch with a little bit of paper crafting thrown into. And today, I'm so excited. This is my stitching combination paper crafting, put it all together video that I know a lot of you have been looking forward to. Today, we are doing stitching scrapbook flip throughs. I have 3 different size scrapbooks. I'm going to, take each one separately and we'll talk about it. And I can show you some of my scrapbook pages, or all of my scrapbook pages so far. If you're interested in the process of it, I do have several videos in my, I have a playlist for scrapbooking your stitches, and you're welcome to go back. I do some pages right in the videos. I'll finish them. I have videos on different types of things I use for just the albums. I'll talk about that a little bit here, but if you really want more in-depth, I suggest you go back to the playlist and check them out. Now, I do want to just address a couple different things. I have 3 different sizes, and I'll talk about each one separately. All of them came from scrapbook.com. That's where I got them from. And all of the page protectors are also from scrapbook.com. So I will link them down below if you'd like to look. It is their brand name. There are plenty of different options for scrapbooks and kind of pages, protective pages, and things like that. I just happen to like these. It works perfectly for the sizes that I wanted, so that's what I went with. Now, excuse me. Before I show you the finished pieces, I do want to just show you kind of my process very, very briefly when it comes to, I always get a lot of questions about interfacing. So I do want to address that. So this is a stitch piece that I just finished this year. And this is going into the scrapbook. Now, when you see my 12 by 12 scrapbook, you will see what I mean when I say I'm going to scrapbook this with pictures. So this is a combination, truly kind of memory piece of pictures plus actual stitching. On all of the pieces that I scrapbook, I put interfacing on the back of them. So I've gotten the interfacing on this. It's bigger than what I'm going to need, and I'm going to cut down smaller than that. I always go a little bit farther, thinking about where I'm going to cut the piece down. That project will get cut down farther. The interfacing I like to use, and I am no expert whatsoever, but what has worked for me, see, this is flexible, but it does give it a little bit of body, and it'll protect the stitches and the stitching from the tape. I use Pellon 950F, and you can get it. I've seen it on Amazon. I've seen it on Etsy. I'm not sure about Joann's because I really don't have any Joann's near me, but I'm sure they might. 123 Stitch has it, and I'm sure lots of other places where you get interfacing would have it as well. So it is pretty readily available. Certainly there are other options that if you like better, or you're much more versed in sewing and interfacing uses, you might find one that you like better, but that's what I happen to use, okay? And then I generally just use double-sided tape with my actual 3M double-sided tape. I've shown you that in the videos before, and that's what will go on to the interfacing. Alrighty, so I have 3 different sizes, and I think what we're going to do is we're going to start small to big. And what I will do, let me talk about it as we go. So this is the first one. This is what I consider my 6 by 8. Now what I do is I have the stitch pieces, but then I also keep just some extra page protectors. This is what they look like. This is the 6. This will be slightly, this is a slightly bigger piece right here because it goes extra and it goes in the rings. And I want to say, I have it measured so I know exactly. I want to say it's 6 plus 2 ticks by, I want to say 8.5. 8.5. So it's a little bit bigger than 6 by 8, but that's what I call it. If you're on the website and you go to order, you'll see the different sizes. These are archival because they're also used for scrapbooking. So if you are worried about something like that in regards to archivalness, that is not a worry right there. Okay, so this is the size of the first book. The different books, some of them come, you can label it here if you wanted to. So if you wanted them all in a row, kind of something like that, they could be labeled. You could do them by, if you had enough stitches, you could do them by season, you could do them by holidays, you can do them by, boy, if you liked a certain designer, you could do it by designer. And as you can see, I'm going to go through closer, but this is how they go in the book. Now, I was thinking about just holding the book up, but there is some glare. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to undo the 3-ring binder there, and then I will show them up each. I'm not going to take them out of the protectors because they're in there pretty well. And the whole idea is to keep the pieces safe. So if I keep taking them in and out of the protector, then they can start to get banged up and everything else. So this way I can kind of angle it so you will get an idea. Alrighty, so here we go. Let's start with my smallest scrapbook. This one, and what's great is whether it's a small scrapbook or it's a big one, you can combine lots of different stitch pieces in there. This one I happened to combine 2 of the stitches that came back in, I want to say it was 2020 when the designers were putting out stitches. And here I just, oops, there we go. I just used stickers, and that's how I finished it right there. I'm not going to pull out and show you in the backs, but it's easy enough. You could journal, so you don't have to have elements like this. You can journal about why you stitched it, where you stitched it, things like that, names of the designer or the fabrics, all of that. I prefer to have that on the back, and then I'm just going to have the pieces on the front. Especially too, if I want to do in some of them with the photos, if I want to do a little message, it's a little bit more private that way. All right, so if we flip the page over, you can see here, I want to say this is my vintage needle arts. I'm not going to remember all of them, but I'll do my best. And if there was something you wanted me to check up on for you, I could do my best and see. I'm not even going to try to tell you what the fabrics were. If you wanted to know, I could look. Here we have base cardstock, we have pattern paper, and then I like to use things like this. These are just really small pieces of cardstock that I then use my paper cutter and cut them, and that just adds the little design element down there and finishes off the piece. All right, and you know what? And I can put them right back in as I take them out. Next. Again, you can see this element again, and I put these side by side because they are kind of flowers that are of similar colors, and I've got them kind of in the spring area right now because my scrapbooks have just been started, right? I don't have more than one in any of the sizes. So right now I kind of have it almost seasonally, and some that might not be a specific season. I kind of put them in with something that matches for me. So that's how I've got them laid out, but you can do anything. This one here, what I really like to do, and all the other 2 pages had this and I didn't show you this, but what I always like to do, and this is myself, I'm a paper crafter, and I used to always do this. I'd have my main element, and then I would always put a small little, I'll call it a frame, but just I like to layer it on a slightly bigger piece of cardstock. So this way it makes it pop up a little bit and makes it a little bit more of the focal point. So again, I did cardstock base. I think this is pattern paper. And here I did 5 pieces, right? Is it? Nope. 1, 2, yes, 5. I'm not sure if I can count backwards or not. Again, of just cut cardstock. And so you'll notice on this one, because I wanted the elements smaller, I did really skinny ones. And you can see the difference in sizes of stitch pieces. You don't even have to do any of that. You can put your pieces on some cardstock or pattern paper and be good with it. I would say that you do not want the flimsiest of pattern paper as your base because your pieces won't hold up as well. I would use either cardstock, and it doesn't have to be the thickest cardstock, or I would use the pattern paper that is closer to a cardstock than it is, say, a copy paper. I know that's really not exact, but it's almost by feel for me sometimes, to be honest with you. I want to say this was a Twin Peak Primitives, but I didn't stitch all of the piece of it. I think it came out of a Punch Needle Primitive Stitcher magazine. Then here on the flip side, so we're getting still kind of springish. This was a piece, this could be spring or summery really, from I think it's Silver Creek Samplers. And the bottom element here, instead of using strips of cardstock, I have a lot of baker's twine. And so you basically just wrap it in any sort of design that you want, back and forth and over from the back. And I put that over the pattern paper that kind of reminded me of like the beach or sunrise, sunset. And I just did it in any fashion possible. And again, layering my piece. I'm not sure there are any pieces that I didn't somehow or other layer. If I think of it and I notice one, then I will show you. So that's that. Now, sometimes the pieces can go both horizontal and vertical. So even though in the book, you'll flip it and it'll look like this, all you have to do is turn to see the full piece. Now this piece, Country Cottage Needleworks, this was big enough almost really to cover the whole piece. So all I did was just take different pieces of colors in my stitching, and I used different pieces of cardstock, and I just kept layering it a quarter of an inch, quarter of an inch, quarter of an inch. Quarter of an inch, half an inch, those are the different layering. If I want a small layer, if I want a tight layer, oh, I'm gonna flip it over. I'm gonna show you a really tight layer here in a minute. I wanna say these are quarter. Flipping it over, this is make sure I have it up right the right side up, from the Heart Needle Art by Wendy. I did change the colors on this one. I can go back and look if it was something you needed to know. And do you see how this one is a really super tight, probably 1/8 of an inch. So just like stitching, you know how you give yourself, if you want to give yourself a 1-inch border along each side, then you have to do 2 inches more when you cut your fabric. It's the same thing. If I wanted say I wanted a quarter inch, it's a little bit easier math, all along the sides like this, then I would cut this an inch, a half an inch bigger than my stitch piece size. Here, I wanted a little bit tighter, and it would help if I showed it the right way. And so that's why you can barely see it. But this piece almost is the size of the actual size of the scrapbook. So I didn't do anything extra besides just layering it and then finding a piece of cardstock that kind of brought out the colors. This is an old piece. This was a Satsuma Street that I stitched a while ago. And here, I really wasn't sure what to do. And this one is not layered. So you can see, you don't have to actually do kind of the border around it. It was so big that trying to do a layer on it, on the sides, it's pretty much the size of the piece, that it didn't make any sense. I did end up finding some pattern paper that was very similar in color, maybe a little bit darker than the base cardstock, but it also brought out the oranges in the piece. And there I just used, you can see it only goes to about there. That I really kind of eyeballed. How far did I want the paper to go down? You really don't see it on the side very much. And I wanted to see it a little bit here. So I did layer my stitched piece closer to the bottom than the top. Sometimes I like everything symmetrical, but very often I like to do it a little bit off of being completely symmetrical. That is really a design element that it really depends on what you like or don't like. If that would really bother you to be off, then I would say, you know, keep it pretty even. Here's another one that I didn't actually do any cardstock, like a base around my stitch piece. This is I believe it's another Country Cottage Needleworks base cardstock, some pattern paper that kind of looked oceany. And I wasn't sure how to put it. You could easily just layer one layer in the next, you know, the pattern paper over the cardstock. But here I just wanted to do something a little different. So I did it just for half of the piece. And I used the darker colors. This is definitely kind of an ombre sort of piece of pattern paper. So I kind of went with the dark and worked my way in. Kind of felt oceany to me with that one. Here's a prime example again of a piece. A lot of the pieces you'll notice that are big as my scrapbook, especially with the smaller ones, because some of the bigger pieces you wouldn't necessarily have that big a stitch. But this one is again not layered with any cardstock based on it. It just has a base cardstock, and then I just did along the center with a little bit of the blue showing on the top and the bottom, another piece of red cardstock to pull out the red and the blue in this piece by Plum Street. And then I didn't know where to put this. This is kind of within the summertime stitches. What is that? Oh yeah. So this right here, I did layer because you can see I had plenty of space and I wasn't really sure on the colorings. So I did end up pulling out sort of the blue that's in the door, and it's cardstock. And then I happen to have this really cool metal die, kind of a picket fence. So I thought that really went well with the stitched piece. I have seen different stitched pieces they're almost like shadow box sometimes, and I have seen things like this, like wooden picket fences or things like that. It's really cute, and that's probably where I got this idea, was I was probably remembering that from an Instagram post somewhere or other. So that's that one. Alrighty, some more summer here, and this is super basic. And you can see, I think it looks great. So elaborate does not have to be what you do. If you love doing elaborate, I say go for it. If you'd like to do it simple, go for it. This is literally just a piece of pattern paper, and it is a thicker kind of cardstock-like pattern paper. And you can see, again, it's kind of one of those ombre pieces where it started with the deeper blue, worked its way up. So I thought of this as ocean all the way up to the sky. This is... It might be Silver Creek, but I'm not sure. I'd have to look that up. It's been a while since I stitched that one. So that was very easy for me to complete. Sometimes if I really love the fabric, I do add some extra top and bottom. So you can see here, I did it very tight. Part of it was from necessity, right? It's about the size of my base cardstock. But here, I could have done it tight again, but I liked the fabric color with it. Plus, it makes it a little bit more interesting to have it fading into the actual piece there. Now this was a teeny tiny one. So I did decide, instead of doubling it up with something else, I just added a bunch of things. So we have the stitch piece in the center. This is, I can visualize the piece right now, and I can't remember who the designer is on it. And then I just used, these are, let me feel them. These are cardstock stickers. So they are a little bit thicker than some of your other matte ones, but they're not super, super thick. There are stickers that can be kind of puffy and popped up, which if you want to use, fantastic. These, I wanted them a little bit closer. So I just used stickers. This was probably a 12 by 12 piece of different themed stickers. I probably went through, found ones that I liked, and I just put them on the top and the bottom. This one is smaller, but I decided to let the color of the cardstock really let this pop. So I have a base of the brown, and then I have a large layer of the maroon, and then I did layer the other piece, there we go, with some more brown. But I kept quite a bit of the maroon since that was the focal color in the piece. And this is a Stone Street stitch, if you're interested. And then I can't remember, did I finish this year? I might have. It's Ye Old Crow. I don't know if that's Heart and Hand. I'm not 100% sure. And I used a really kind of fun fabric. I want to say this is a fabric flare, like a pumpkin spice or something or other. And so I had difficulty deciding how to finish that. And I went with my tried and true little pieces of cardstock at the bottom just to finish it off, but you know, really having that be the focal point of the piece. Alrighty. Here, this is a Crochet Go-Go. I stitched this quite some time ago. And we just have a base cardstock, and then we have a layered piece of cardstock. And again, I take all of my cues from my stitched piece, and it's not exact, but it's along the spectrum, same sort of color scheme, and that's really all I want. Sometimes I get pretty exact. The green's not 100%, but it is closer than the orange. And I just did the 2 layers, and I love it how it looks. And again, your eye goes immediately to, for me, the owl, and then it takes in the whole piece. This is a Stitching with the Housewives, and we have cardstock layer. This, in fact, that's probably actually a cardstock pattern paper, not straight cardstock. I did go with a red kind of a layer for the stitched piece. And then this is washi tape. Again, you can get packages of washi tape, you can get certain designs or whatever you want, and just a super easy layer to put on the bottom. And that, because what was I going to do at the bottom? I wanted a little something, and that fit perfectly. So that's what I ended up with. As you can see, we've gone into the winter section. So this is the last piece in my small scrapbook. And this is another Stone Street stitch. And I don't know if you're going to be able to tell up here. I didn't know what to do with this one. I was really not sure. I originally had it where I was layering it with the, well, there's the base layer is black, and then I did the gray so I could pull in up here. And then I really wanted, generally the color I want to pop from my stitch piece, I use as the cardstock that's the layer, because that's kind of draw it right there. And that kind of finishes the piece off. So I did want the red, the maroonish to be, but it just felt like something was missing. And I played around and played around. I have a Cuttlebug, which does, and I use embossing folders. And so it can emboss the cardstock. And I did it on the, let me see, this is the negative side of, so it's actually the relief side of it, not popped out. And that's how I finished that piece off. But again, I have a lot of these tools because I have paper crafted for years. You go with what you have. If there's something new you want to explore, go for it. And you can see here, now I haven't filled out the back of this one yet. Some of them I have, some of them I haven't. I have all of these other pieces. This book will probably be fuller than, it won't take all of those because it is filling up. But this is just a great way for me to be able to see them rather than having them sit in my drawer. You will see my drawer at a Flossmas later on because of my goals for 2024. But for now, that is that one. Okay, so now let's go to the next size. This one, I think the scrapbook is probably a 9 by 12 if I had to guess. I most often, and I did end up buying page protectors, 8.5 by 11 and the 9 by 12 version, because cardstock generally comes in either 8.5 by 11 or 12 by 12. A lot of times I do my finishes on the 8.5 by 11 unless I needed that just a little bit extra. So I do not have any 9 by 12 layouts yet to show you. I have not done any. At some point, if I get to a stitched piece that needs that little bit extra and I don't want to put it in my 12 by 12 book, then I'll let you know, because I always do show you my finishes in my regular videos. Okay, here we go. This is probably one of my oldest stitches. It's funny because I started stitching about 30 years, well, it's probably more than 30 years now because it was 30 back when I started back in 2019. And then there was a very short stretch when my kid, I don't even know if I just had Megan, or if I had Megan and Connor, but there was a short stretch where I think I had both children, where I needed something and I picked up the cross stitch again and I started this piece. And then life just got super busy, like life happens to, and I put it aside. And it sat probably good 15 years at least. And all it needed at that point, I think, was the back stitch. So this is actually done on a 14 count because back then I was doing a lot of 14 counts. And this is from an old Leisure Arts book. And here, it's just 3 layers of cardstock. I have the base lighter green, and then I did darker, and I went to purple, and I just pulled out the different colors in the piece. Now this one is fun. This is a stitching experiment I did. I actually stitched the same exact piece, I want to say it's a Plum Street, on 2 different colors of fabric. And part of it was for me to see how the pieces looked, whether it was on kind of a bright, warmer piece or a kind of cooler color fabric. And I wanted to put them together in the one scrapbook page. So this one right here is base cardstock. And then I just did, I want to say that is pattern paper. And if you're, I don't know if it shows up, it's kind of nautical and beachy. And I just had the extra sides on the top and the bottom. And I decided rather than doing stickers or something, I just did strips of the cardstock. And you can see neither one of these are layered with a kind of a frame layer. They're just placed right on there. So that was fun. I really enjoyed that. It was difficult because I would stitch one and then I would do the next one the exact same amount so that I had them done exactly the same time, because I know myself, if I had stitched one, I'm not sure I would have stitched the other one. Okay, so again, you can see in the book, it would show you like, it would come out like this. So you just go sideways. This was a super fun stitch by Liz Matthews. I think it's called Yonder. And I wasn't sure what to do, and I just went layer after layer after layer. So I did 1, 2, 3 tight layers here using a darker and the green to kind of pop the colors. And then you could do all the way. It's kind of cool because it gives it dimension when you do all those tiny layers and you keep popping up. It's kind of like, there was a type of card, and I can't think of the name of it right now, where we would do cuts and you would keep repeating the picture, parts of the picture, and it would layer it up. And that's kind of what that reminded me of. I'm not thinking of it at the moment. But then I just repeated the 2 colors of cardstock with just a deeper layer right there. But again, everything draws your eye right to the stitch piece, which I really like. Then on this side here, this is Barbara Anna. This is my first Barbara Anna stitch. And this is a layer of just pattern paper that is a little thicker, and then some layers of cardstock to pull out the colors. I wanted something blue to really kind of hone in on the blues in this piece, and that piece of fabric was so beautiful. I wanted that color on its own, and I wanted kind of the contrasting colors in the stitch piece. And you can see this is an example where I did completely offset it. It's not even equal any of the 3 sides. They're all different. And I just really like it like that. Again, that might be not your taste when it comes to that, but I do like to offset things sometimes. The next one you're going to see is slightly offset, but it's almost equal. So I can do, depending on the piece, I kind of play around with all of them. This was a stitched piece that was stitched for me, and I actually, I just have it down here, stitched piece gifted to me, and then on the back would be the information of who stitched it. This is not 100% even size-wise. You can see it is closer to the top than it is the bottom. This is another one of those kind of multicolored, just fades from light to dark pieces of pattern paper. It's not true ombre because it's different colors. Usually I think of ombre as more light to dark of one color. And it's got a base cardstock and the same layer right there. So that was so fun. It was really nice to have somebody stitch something for me, and then I can put it in the book. I have a couple of the pieces I have been trying to figure out how to put in my books, but they will go in my books because they're treasures to me, and I want to have them in there as well. And then this one is Annie B's Folk Art. And I used, you can see there, I wanted to pull out the reds. And so the base cardstock is red, and then you can see the pattern paper. It's just a bunch of like fish. And this does feel like it goes ombre. So it's really dark up to the light, the same design from the dark to the light. And then the cardstocks here behind the stitched piece, red and the blue. And again, just pulling out some of my favorite colors in the pieces. So that one's that. All right, next. This one I stitched a long time ago, actually. I can't remember what year I finished it. This is Carriage House Samplings, I want to say. And this one here, base cardstock, and then I like polka dots. And I don't have as many pieces of polka dot cardstock as I used to, but I thought this was a lot of fun. It was the perfect color, and I think that's part of why I picked it. And I kept this one just all blues, really, really blues. This is, I don't even remember, this is a Zweigart. This is when I was first starting back to stitching. This might be early 2020 that I was stitching that. Because in 2019, I don't know how many of the basic Zweigart colors, or if I was still using more of the whites and the creams and the blacks. And, you know, besides that pattern paper, we just have one layer to frame my piece, and it's good to go. Okay, this piece took me forever to stitch because I did change the colors because I went full-blown different when it came to the fabric. So this is a hands-on design. It's one of those chalkboard pieces, and it would have been autumn. So I did end up changing colors of different things in my piece because the colors really didn't pop stitching-wise. And I ended up, this is up here. I wasn't sure what to do. Let's start here first. And I talked about this not that long ago because I finished this one not that long ago. I had no clue what to do. Every color I tried for the stitch sleeves, it just wasn't popping the way I wanted to pop. So I ended up using, these are just little die cuts. I have a Big Shot. There's a ton of different brands of die cutters, metal die cutters that you can use. I've had this thing probably for 15 years at least, and it's still going strong. And I had a metal die of leaves, so I just cut those out in different colors. And I have glue that I like to use, different glues on different pieces. I want to say I did an extra where I finished this one, so you could actually see the glues I used. So that was the first part I did. Up here, I just decided I wanted this was originally a 12 by 12 sticker, so I just cut it down to the edges. And then this is a, kind of a thick sticker. And so because, oops, there we go. Because it was half on and half off the stitched piece here, I actually did add a little bit of dimensional tape, the mounting tape. And I might have had to do 2 layers underneath this bottom part. So it popped it up, and so it's all one size. Part of it is on the stitch piece, part of it is on the mounting tape, which is then against the cardstock. And I just thought that was a lot of fun. And it gives it a little bit of dimension when you're looking at from the bottom. And I just went with a piece. I couldn't figure out which one I wanted to do, but I ended up with this sticker because I thought that one worked out well. So this is one of my most recent finishes, and took forever to stitch because of all the different things I wasn't sure about. But I really like how it turned out in the end. This one, let me see what I did here. This one is a Satsuma Street Halloween cat. Love this one. Now, I did use, it's mica spray is what it's called. So I did use some paper crafting elements here on this one. And I basically just, if you need to know what color and what brand, I can certainly figure that out for you. I'm looking at them across the room, but I can't list all of these things in the description box. That would be a lot, but I can always find something if you want. So I ended up doing kind of a silver kind of mica spray just to create my own kind of pattern paper, but it's on cardstock. And I layered the purple with the black, and then I definitely wanted to distinguish the stitched piece from the back cardstock. So I did frame it with a layer here. And then I use brads. Brads are another great element. They're a lot of fun that I like to, they're a lot of fun of an element I like to use in my trading cards and here to add a little something extra. You could certainly do them in your ornaments or any other type of things that you do. And I ended up doing the 3 down here. There is the idea of odd number items, so that's why they have the 3 down here. And then I just felt like something needed to be up there, so I put a 4th one up there. I don't necessarily think you would have needed that in the end, and maybe if I did it again, I only would have done the 3 underneath. But it's there, so it's staying there now. And then the last one in my 8.5 by 11 is, this is a Prairie Schooler. And this was stitched on a opal fabric because I wanted it to sparkle, and it's fun because in person I'm looking at it. It does sparkle when you look at it, so that's a lot of fun. And then this is done on, I don't know if you can tell there, this is another one of the polka dot pattern paper cardstocky things. So that is the actual layer. And then these are silver. They're not super sparkly, but they are kind of more of a matte silver, and that's cardstock. So I just did 1 up here and 2 down here to kind of frame the piece. And the piece itself is not framed around the edges. Again, it was close enough to the edges, and that was a good enough size that I ended up keeping it just like that. So that right there is all of the pieces in my 8.5 by 11 book. And then I have one more book. It's the smallest number of pieces. I mean, I don't think it would come as a surprise to you that my 6 by 8 book has the most stitched pieces, because I stitch a bunch of smalls, among other things. And I mean, 6 by 8's not super small. And then I do have some of the bigger pieces if they're too big, or if there's something I want to frame. You'll see them in the other video, and I have to start thinking about finishing for next year. But they are not in there. So this right here is my 12 by 12 book. It is my biggest of the books. And I want to say you might be able to get a 12 by 15, but I don't have any reason for it, so I don't think I would get it. And here you go, is the size of the page protector for that. So that's what all my pieces are in. Let me open this up, and I'll open up the D-rings. So all of these books have D-rings with the 3 hole punches. The 6x8 might be just 2 hole punches. But because I've gotten the page protectors with the scrapbooks, and they were the suggested ones on scrapbook.com, it has the right amount of holes for the actual piece. Okay, now this is what I was talking about when I was talking about combining stitching with scrapbooking. And these next 2 pieces, they are the only ones that I've done with the pictures. The butterfly I most definitely want to do. And I thought this would be a lot of fun because these books will eventually, for me right now, it's a lovely way for me to flip through. I can put them out if, you know, people want to look at my stitching, and they can just see my stitching. And then there'll be memories for my kids later on. And it'll be all in a compact piece so that they have something, they can each kind of take what, you know, from what they want or whatever, and they can, you know, have a small piece of different things that I used to like to do. But with this pictures, it goes one step farther because then it helps them remember different things themselves. So this one right here, I stitched, this is a Satsuma. Yes, Pretty Little Amsterdam. I stitched that, and I had stitched that, I had gotten it originally because Megan in high school, for one of her classes, they went to Amsterdam. They went on all different, it was kind of like a school trip to go in different places. And that was part of where she was. And so what I ended up doing is I picked some pictures that she gave me. 1, 2, so there's 4 pictures on here. And you can see right here, some pictures of just scenery, her with one of her best friends in high school, and then again, her with some scenery. And all I did with this one was, there's nothing but, it's a layer of cardstock, and all of my different pieces and elements are just taped right on there. I didn't even frame my piece here because you can see it's almost framed right there. And I used parts of these pieces of pictures, and I layered them on top of each other so I could get them all in. And so I thought that was a lot of fun, and that would be a really lovely thing on the back. You can talk about adding the history to the piece, right? This is my only 2-page spread that I have. I'm going to show it up, and then I'll focus on the stitched part because they're stitch piecing only on one part. If you had a couple of pieces that were similar design and maybe they went with pictures, for example, they could be part of a 2-page spread. Or coming up, if you consider pieces companion pieces, you might have like a spread that really goes together. And I'll talk about that in a minute. So this is my full 2-piece spread right there. This piece is all pictures, but I'll show you a closer element in a moment. And this has got the stitched piece. So this is by the Bay Needle Arts, and that is Noble Lighthouse. And my kids are going to remember this instantly. They don't even need to see any pictures. We, for years and years and years, would go to Algonquin for our summer vacations. And at least once during that week, we would go to Nubble, and they would climb the rocks, as you can see. And they will always have fantastic memories. I know that for a fact of this. And so I wasn't sure what to do here. So this took a while. I hemmed and I hawed on my base cardstock. I found a piece that was pretty neutral, especially with the pictures. I did print this one off black and white. And so I did use, there's the iconic kind of red roof over here. And so I ended up using the red with that. I did frame with a couple pieces my stitched piece because I did want it to pop out, especially because this photo was framed. So I wanted this to be an element that really popped. Here you just have stickers. That's all I have with that. These are full-size pictures. I really didn't have to cut them down at all. And then on this side, you can see it's all full-size pictures for the most part. They might be trimmed a little bit, and then those are just stickers to go with it. So this is multiple years of vacations. So there's different pictures of the kids, different ages, and it's all started with this. And now it becomes this wonderful memory for them when they look at these scrapbook pages. So I really love that. That's one of my favorites, to be honest with you. I also have fantastic memories of the vacation, so that doesn't hurt either. It makes me smile. I'm able to see pictures of my kids, as well as just the memories of that part of our vacation every year. I don't think there was a year that we went to Maine that we did not go there. All right, this one was stitched a long time ago. It took me a long time to scrapbook it. I think I just forgot about it, to be honest with you. And it's pretty simple in the end. This is Caterpillar cross stitch. You know that there's a set of 4 of them. This is the only one I've stitched. I've thought about stitching the others, but there's so much to stitch out there that maybe one day, but right now this is the only one I stitched. I think this was one of the first times I used my Nantucket Sky by Fabrics by Stephanie. And you know, if you know me now, I'm hooked on her Nantucket Sky. And I didn't know what to do with this one. This is a base piece of cardstock that I was trying to pull out. I think I was pulling out some of the colors here from the main elements. And there was some brown, so I wanted to add the brown, but I really wasn't liking, I had tried just framing it and I wasn't loving it. So what I ended up doing was I basically cut out squares and then cut them in half, and I ended up making photo corners. Remember back for those of you who used to do the scrapbooking with the photo corners? So I kind of made my own, and it still just needed something. So I took a piece of cardstock and I turned it in the other direction, and it just went down that way. So really 2 pieces of cardstock plus a little extra for the corners. I did need a paper cutter. You could do it if you had like a square punch, you could punch. If you had the actual corners, what was good for me was I could, because I was using my paper cutter and then cut the square and then cut it in half, I could decide what size I wanted those. If you have the corner punch, which I thought I did, and that's originally what I thought I was going to do, and I don't think I kept it when I moved down to Delaware, so I ended up having to make it myself. So I really like how this one came out. Super excited with that. Now this piece right here will be part of a 2-piece spread whenever I can finish Cinnamon Stars. And that's why when I say, if you ever see me stitching Cinnamon Stars and you talk about how I want to scrapbook these companion pieces, this is where. This is Betsy's Autumn, and this is Plum Street Samplers, I believe. And both of these pieces are stitched on the same fabric, and I'm not 100% sure if they're the same size. I'll figure that out whenever Cinnamon Stars gets done. It'd be really cool if they are, because what I will try to do is try to do the same exact finish. I mean, it's cardstock, and then I took washi tape. It's the same washi tape at the top and the bottom with a layer of cardstock. So even though the books, this is not the type of scrapbook with the 3-ring scrapbook, you know, when it's open, they don't lay, flush up against each other. They are open. But if it's the same exact kind of design, it will very, very much look like they're companion pieces, and it is part of a 2-page spread. And I actually did not frame Betsy's Autumn because you stitched a frame. Now, Cinnamon Stars could be different because you don't stitch a frame like you do with Betsy's Autumn. So I'll play around with that. I most definitely will pull this piece out when I go to, ooh, the sun kind of went in, so there's less of a glare at this point. I will take this one out when I do go to Scrapbook, whenever I finish Cinnamon Stars, so that I really get an idea to have them be true companion pieces. And I'm stitching my Jardin Privé Quakers. Those 4 will be a 4-page kind of spread, and they will all be finished the same because they are companions. And what's the other one? Oh, Jan Hicks, the balloons, Carolyn's balloons. All 4 seasons will be stitched, and they will be in a 4-page spread as well. And then the very last piece I have, this was also one of my oldest. This was probably stitched when Megan was born. It was mostly stitched when Megan was born. And I was going to make a stocking. I'm not exactly sure who was going to actually fully finish that stocking because I don't sew. But that's what I was going to do. And again, life just must have gotten in the way, and I had stitched it except for the back stitching. And you're going to say, well, Laura, there's not a lot of back stitching. And I agree. What I ended up doing was, like, I back stitched things like their faces, but when I looked at the piece, I decided I didn't need it necessarily. I had started doing it here, but with the navy fabric, you weren't really seeing anything. So I decided to keep this piece more of a little bit more vague lines rather than the actual full back stitch. Now, given the size of this piece, it was going to have trouble fitting in any of my scrapbooks. This is one that probably could have used a 12 by 15. So what I did was I cut it very close, kind of fussy cut all around the edges. I ended up, and because it's got a little bit of an edge that's almost like it was bordered with cardstock, it's not. That would have been fun, layering it and then cutting that again. And then I really didn't know what to do. So what I ended up doing was I took some rubber stamps. I took some different colors. So you have the blue on blue, tone on tone, plus some red to pull out the reds. And then in person, you can see them really well, and it gives it dimension. But those are snowflake brads. So I have 1, I have 2, and I have 3 up here. So we have our visual triangle of brads, and those add a little bit of dimension in person. Not something I don't know if you'll be able to tell dimension right here. But again, a lot of these things, it pops with the in-person part. And so this one, information, this is probably a leisure arts, because it was, Megan is 22. So there wasn't a lot of options back probably when I would have started this. And this is probably a 14 or 16 count, actually. Whatever was called for most likely at the time. What was I going to say with that? I'm not really sure. That's all right. But, on the back, it can say that this was originally going to be stitched as a stocking, but in the end, I decided to keep it just in the scrapbook instead. And it's probably one of my earliest stitches. My super early stitches from 30 years ago, I don't know what happened to them. So those were framed, and they hung up at my mom's house at the time where she lived, and I have no idea what's happened to them since. So they've probably been thrown out, or they ended up in a Goodwill sort of thing, and I have nothing to show you from that 35 year gap of when I was stitching back then. None of that survived over the years. So as far as I know, unless it's sitting in a basement at my brother's or something, I'm not sure. But this is the book obviously with the least amount, because unless I'm probably moving you back and forth, sorry about that. Unless I take a small piece and I add pictures with it, like I will with my butterfly here. Otherwise, a lot of times I go with the size book. But again, you can get a book this size, take a bunch of pieces that are similar, and they can all go in one book together, type of thing. So it took a little while to talk about everything, but I hope that gave you some ideas. Feel free to always ask if you want to know. If you have done and you were any scrapbooking of pages and you are in my Facebook page, feel free to share with other people. I love to see everybody stitching and finishing. Or if you want to just send something to show me, I would love to see it as well. I really, really enjoy seeing that. But I encourage you, if you don't know what to do with them and you're worried about at some point down the line that they may end up either thrown out or in a Goodwill of some sort, maybe this is just like a nice memory keeper for future generations to have. That's what scrapbooks were supposed to be anyway, right? So anyway, that's about it for this Flossmas. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope it gave you a bunch of ideas. I'm looking forward to 2024 and getting a lot more pieces scrapbooked. And so hopefully I'll have to keep track. And next year I will be able to show you maybe the newest scrapbook pieces in a Flossmas in 2024. But that's for another day. All right, so until next time, happy stitching and happy finishing.